Hey, it's me, Ben, and I'm going live again for some reason. So what I'm going to do this time is I'm going to color in this Beehive girl here. And I'm going to use some markers this time because last time was pretty messy and I don't want to do any more blow drying. I was thinking about some fails I've had with jobs. I don't know about you, but I've been let go from a lot of workplace situations, and some of it was just my work ethic at the time, and others I think it was maybe even that I needed some medication. So here's a couple stories. One time I was living in San Francisco and I was really in need of a job, and I saw something on Craigslist that they were looking for people to help decorate the cakes at an erotic bakery. And they needed somebody who would be, willing to pull these heavy cakes out of the oven and sort of deal with baking in general. But mostly they needed somebody who was interested in picking up the airbrush and the little squirters and making some erotic imagery on cakes. So the guy was super old school. I'm remembering now that he was like, no email. He wanted you to come in, and I think if you didn't sound too crazy, he would have you come in. And he wanted me to come in for the day and kind of do a tryout day. So the first thing you do is you pull these cakes out of the oven, kind of trim them down, whatnot. And then when they're cooled enough, you'd put the frosting down on it. So I practiced that a little bit. And then he just had me do like some practice on like tinfoil on some cardboard, just as like a surface. Lay down a little bit of frosting as a canvas. And then then you'd go into like a little dark room where there was a projector, and it was a super hard to see, out of focus projector. And then you can work your magic in there, kind of using the projector to trace. And so first I would have to pick something out. So they had like what's called a morgue file, which is if you aren't on a computer and you need to do graphics or illustration or whatever, you just have this huge file system of all these inspiring images or things that you would reuse sometimes. So they had a huge, let's see here, what color do I want? Okay, so they had a huge catalog of imagery that they would put on the cakes. And he was like, go through this stuff and see what you want to work on. And then go to it. So, sorry, it's hard to draw and talk at the same time, it turns out. So I was going through the files and I picked something out that I don't know, it spoke to me. I guess I wanted to show that I wasn't afraid or intimidated by any of the subject matter or imagery at this bakery. So I picked out this picture. It was a cartoon. It was very like back of a fishing magazine, kind of a cartoon. And it was of this guy alone in his living room. And we don't need to go into the details because we could try to keep it PG on YouTube. But yeah, he was alone, and he had all of the stuff he could ever want. You know, he had like videos, and he had videotapes all laying around, and magazines all over the floor. And it looked like he had just exploded. Perhaps I've gone too far already. But anyway, I mean, when I brought up an erotic bakery, and you're still tuning in, I don't know what we're doing here if you're going to be bothered by the story. Anyway, so I brought that into the dark room, put it into the little projector, and got out my frostings. And I proceeded to try to make an icing version of this image. Now, if you've never worked with an airbrush and icing, man, it's probably the hardest medium I've ever worked with. So, like, particular, like, you can't mess up. Can't mess up anything. Or you're gonna have to scrape it all off and do it again. And if it's just a piece of cardboard, then it's not the end of the world. But if it's a cake, you can't keep scraping stuff off and retrying. You know, you got to kind of get it on the first or second try. Time is money. And so I did this version of this guy on the pretend cake, and we brought it out and we looked at it. And, you know, honestly, like, as far as the shapes and the line art went, it was okay. I mean, I was tracing it basically, but it's really hard to adjust like the line quality when you're working with that. What are those guns called? Like the little, you know, the little milkers, and you squirt out the frosting with that. And then, oh, okay. So I did that and it looked okay. Then you go out into the daylight. It was like so dusty and old and weird in this place, and there was just like electrical cords draped across places where you need to walk all the time. Anyway, you go out there into the light and you get your airbrush out, and now you have to like airbrush in the color on your line work. And that's where I went really wrong. You know, he ended up basically looking like I kind of picture this man like kind of trying to make himself feel better and distract himself from a severe sunburn. And that was about it. That didn't go any further. Although I think the guy did call me back months later and was like, "Are you still interested in working at the bakery?" Because he had hired like a young lady who turned out wasn't willing to pull the cakes out of the oven or something. Wasn't willing to do the labor part. But I was like, "Nah, thanks. I've moved on to other things." I think I was driving Lyft by that point. Okay, so around that same time, really, maybe a little bit sooner, a little earlier, I had another one-day job. And when you live in the Bay Area or any major metropolitan city like that, you can, as an illustrator, you can get these gigs where like corporate meetings will be going on, and you'd be there to be like the visual notes, you know, to try to cartoon and illustrate the things that the people are talking about in the meeting. And so I would get a decent amount of these gigs through all like the little placement agencies. And I'm not gonna lie, it was always a huge it was a con. I mean, I don't know how else to put it. It was a huge con, and I'm sure that there are people out there who do an amazing job, but I didn't see how to pull it off any better than I did, because I'm going to take a break with this pen because it's drying out. Because what happens is, they're like, corporations, and they're, have you ever been in a corporate meeting maybe, and it's like very insider with their talks and their vocabulary and the abbreviations of everything, right? And it's like either you know what they're talking about or you don't. And if you don't work there, you probably don't know what they're talking about to a level where you could like draw the words that they're saying. I mean, you really have to understand something to draw anything, right? So there was a lot of like there was a lot of like three-dimensional arrows. You'd be like, oh yeah, there's this three-dimensional arrow, and it's very graphical, and it would usually there'd be like a lot of suns, right? The arrow goes to the sun, and then they talk about like the ADRs or whatever, and you'll be, yes, the ADR, and then the arrow, and then it goes to the sun, and maybe it's a smiley face on the sun, and you just make it up. And to my astonishment, it always went great. I think the corporate guys or gals would be semi bored in these meetings, and they liked just looking over and seeing what I was up to and just watching the arrows and the suns and stuff get made. So it always went great, except one time I was called to do a gig at a corporation in the Bay Area, outer Bay Area, whatever. And I don't want to say exactly what the company was, but, well, let's just say that if you were to go online and look up this company, you'd already be on the page that you know what I'm saying. Okay, so I get this 1-day gig at this company, and geez, I wasn't even sure I was going to tell this story because it's pretty. All right, here we go. There was like, I don't know, maybe a dozen of us who were there, different illustrators from around the Bay Area who were called to do this event. It was a huge event, and they needed us to like illustrate stuff in real time as they did these meetings. And there was various like assignments and an all-day gig of making stuff on the fly for people. And you know what? I knocked it out of the park. They loved it. They loved everything I did. They loved everything that all the illustrators did. They're happy with all of us. So we were invited to. Hey, Sugar Weasel, what is going on? I got my iPad this time so I can see if somebody comments. Thanks for tuning in. So we all did a great job at this corporate 1-day gig, right? So we were invited to hang out for like the after party. It was this huge budget thing, and I'm kind of reaching around my camera, so it's a little awkward here. They invited us all to hang out for this. I don't want to get into the themes, but it was like themed, and it was expensive, and there was caterers and games, and well, there was free wine and mead, I think. I can't say no to mead. So I had a good time. We all did. All the artists were just having a great time hanging out for this after party. And I probably realistically had 3 glasses of whatever, wine or mead or something, which for me is like, it's pushing it. That's pushing it because, one, I'm social. I'm having a good time. 2, I'm really having a good time. 3 glasses. Now we're talking. It could. I'm not going to get up on the tables and dance or anything, but, well, yeah, there it is. I'm not in the condition to be able to drive home now. That sucks because I'm at this corporate gig. Oops, that's the wrong color. I'm at this corporate gig, and now I can't. Now they know that I'm like not in the condition to be able to drive home, and they have to help. They had to help me get a ride. They had to like call Uber, and the woman who was in charge of our team was what's the word? She wasn't happy with me. And it was really embarrassing and lame. And you know what really sucked about it was I was paid pretty well for this day. And between having to rent a car to get out there and then rent a car to get back to this area and pick up the rental car the next morning, my pay was gone. So, I don't think that's definitely not the last story of problems coming from drinking, but it was one of them. And it doesn't really matter that I'm a lightweight, and I never really drank more than a couple times a week. Maybe in my heyday in San Francisco, it'd be a few times a week, and it would never really be more than that 2 or 3 glasses of wine. But there's some kind of saying, I believe, I've never gone to any sort of recovery or anything, but there's like a saying I know that if it causes you problems, then it's a problem. It doesn't matter what the amount is, right? So it was causing problems. And I think I'm probably kind of allergic to like beer, and I just feel sick the night of drinking beer, and definitely the next day is just trashed if I drink beer. So I probably have some kind of mild allergy, or just not really, kind of intolerant to booze. So this year I no longer drink, and it sucks. I don't know. I don't think I was ever an addict, but is that an alcoholic, an addict? But it does suck to go to the brewery and hang out, because I like hanging out at the breweries, and my wife is having a beer, and I don't do that anymore. I just kind of eat my tacos and watch, and that's where I'm at. So I guess it's okay. I mean, the fact is, man, I never thought that it was ever like really a problem, but it was enough to where it caused problems sometimes. And like, especially if you're sick, or if you're hungover, it's really hard to like feel up to creating or going that extra mile that you need to go in order to succeed in life. And I don't think it's a coincidence that this year, especially since the pandemic hit, my whole schedule's thrown off, and I'm also off any alcohol, trying to be off sugar as much as possible. That's my other addiction. And I'm also on some mild medications for anxiety and depression, and that's a whole other bag of worms. I never thought that would be something that I would be diagnosed with. So I always thought of like, oh, I'm a positive person, How I have like a very positive outlook on life, and I love comedy, and I love to laugh, and I couldn't have problems with those things, but I guess turns out I do, because after getting treatment and talking to people, professional people, it is notably different. And me being able to do projects like my coloring book that is coming out, and being able to get up every day and work on it and not get like distracted and want to jump ship and do something else. I thought I had ADHD because I kept getting like distracted and wanting to bail on projects and do something else, the next shiny object, But it turns out if you have like anxiety, then you can kind of get more easily distracted, because your mind's on other things, or you just kind of jump around a lot with your thoughts because you have trouble concentrating. And so that's where I'm at. That's how I'm able to do this. And you know what? It's also not a coincidence that I'm able to get on YouTube in any capacity and do this sort of thing now. And I couldn't really before. I had severe camera anxiety. I think I might be getting an echo here. I'm going to turn this down. Oh, yes. So there it is. I don't know. I'm an oversharer, which is also, I believe it's a symptom of ADHD. So maybe that does play into it. I don't know. We're all on a spectrum, so this doesn't really matter as long as you seek help and get some treatment and it works. Then you're all right. Man, I didn't think these pens were gonna dry up so much. So I'm gonna change to her hair. Okay. Okay. Let's see. Let's see. We talked about the bakery. We talked about Google. What are some other jobs that went poorly for me? I think some of them just, aside from any imbalances or whatever that might get in the way. I think also I just went a long time with a bad work ethic because honestly, I think it was just the way I was taught. You know, didn't have the best examples at home. Like my dad has a great work ethic, but it's very like rooted in going for survival and sticking with the whatever will supply the paycheck and don't deviate from that ever. And I always knew that wasn't really the path I was going to be on. I wanted to take riskier paths than that. And my mom, I think, is, I lived with her, so I've mostly got my work ethic from her. And I realized pretty late recently in life that I got into this pattern that I learned from her, which is charm your way into a work situation with your personality and then immediately start effing up and then just make excuses for why you effed up, and no problem. Well, it doesn't work like that. If you don't go back to zero when you mess up with somebody. You typically forgive you and they want to move on, but it's still registered with them, that you messed up. And it typically feels like kind of a three strikes you're out situation with workplaces. And I feel like I was sort of subconsciously tracking that, even like I knew that I was heading into my third strike at times, and I would just sort of, maybe that's where the anxiety and depression would come in, kind of just put my head down and let it unfold that way. Like my first job that I had when I moved out to the Bay Area, which is San Francisco, it was like that, where I think they were pretty happy with my work, but I started getting, what's the word, resentful, because I was definitely one of the oldest people on the team, and I had gone through all the .com booms and everything, and I had seen how it goes when a company wants you to like go into, they call it like hive mode or battle mode or whatever they'd have some kind of clever word for working your ass off and never letting you leave. And that's sort of the secret that you figure out quickly to any of these tech companies is they have foosball and basketball courts and slides and shit because they know that you're always going to be there, and they feed you and they give you free drinks, espressos and whatnot, because they know you're always going to be there working. And as you get older and you're not in your 20s anymore, I don't want to like work forever and then like basically camp out at the place and play foosball, and then they'd hang out afterwards after they're done with their work, and they'd still like hang out to play their first person shooters and stuff. And I'm not like up for that. Like, I got a girlfriend who I enjoy being with. I would like to go home. So I got kind of resentful about that. And then what happened? I think I would sort of assume that I could vent to my teammates about this stuff, and that, you know, it wouldn't like move up the chain at all. So one time I was trying to turn this down so I don't get an echo. One time I was venting like that, and I said something to the effect of like, I don't want to work 80 hours a week anymore. I'd rather just work at a coffee shop or something, anything but this. And I think when my contract was up for renewal, they were like, okay, well, here you go, we're all set. Middle management kind of person was like all set to renew me. And then like 10 minutes later, I got called into his office, and he's like, we're just going to like leave it here, and this will be it. And I have a feeling that he like maybe consulted with some team members, and somebody like said that I didn't really want to be there. And that was it. So I think that it's a good learning experience to try to have a better attitude if you want to work somewhere. And if you don't want to work somewhere, maybe don't vent in front of the people that you work with, because it doesn't really pay off. Oh man, this is taking longer than I thought. So I got to have more stories of failed jobs. This is going to be the failed jobs episode. And I've had a lot of them. Oh, here's a good one. At the end of the .com boom, you know, right around like 2000, the economy was starting to turn, and I'm getting really distracted by echoes here. And I'm also got to decide on color. Okay, so the economy was turning bad, and I had this great job that I'd moved to Sonoma, California, which I believe is mostly still there. They've had some, they had a rough summer and fall, but it was a cool job. It was probably my favorite job that I ever had, just because like I loved the work. I was just doing just kind of dumb animations and graphics, and they would just kind of let you do whatever you wanted as long as it was like funny and fun, and you know, you thought kids would enjoy interacting with it. I learned Flash when Flash was a thing, doing Flash animation, got in there, and the team was really cool, and a lot of them are still friends now. And but the thing is, the economy started to change, and we got sold to an Irish company, which meant that I was able to. I was sent off as a 2-person team to go and kind of confer with the animators out there and get everybody on the same page, and that was kind of cool, very like corporate travel guy moment for me. But they cut the whole company loose within a couple months, and so they shuttered the doors on that company. And oh man, I don't want to be embittered about it or anything, but everybody else, like, it was a really small company, and pretty much everybody else who was there like a couple months before me got like stock options and did pretty well on the way out, and I was just kind of like stuck in Sonoma, where there aren't a lot of other comparable jobs. So what happened is, a couple months later, somebody from the company contacted me and was like, hey, you know, they need interns at the sister company over in like Emeryville. Do you want to go do that? And I was like, okay. It was like a paid internship. And then so then I would like commute an hour to Emeryville. Oh man, I killed this pen. I don't know what I'm going to do now. I would commute like an hour to get to Emeryville, and then it's the wrong pen. And then I was like the intern, so I was making a fraction of what I was making before. But for some reason, they were asking me to do the same work. And God, I must have been like 29. No, not even 29. Just like maybe 28, 29. And I think, when you're younger like that, you want to defer to people and you don't want to like cause a scene. You don't want to cause a ruckus. So I didn't say anything. It's like, as a seasoned professional illustrator now, that seems crazy that I wouldn't like do something about that I was getting paid internship status to do the same work that I was just doing at the other sister company. So that was a good learning moment. And then they, of course, shuttered as well. And I got cut loose. But, I think that part of like the social anxiety and maybe the bad work ethic, I don't know. Whenever these companies would go down, I feel like sometimes I probably could have fought harder to stay. And I'd just be like relieved and be like, okay, I'll be one of the people that leaves. No problem. That's lame. Don't do that, kids. But I tell you what, I mean, I know that not everybody can get into this situation, but I'm at a point now where our living expenses are lower because we moved out of the Bay Area, and my wife is doing really well with her vintage clothing sales, and so I've been able to just do print on demand type stuff, and now a Kickstarter, and just do what I want to do and make what I make from that. And I think that works a lot better for me. I think probably the closest thing to a good job match for me before this was driving for Lyft, which is not creative, but then like you make good money and then you come home and do whatever you want, including creative stuff or whatever. I tell you what was the downside of driving Lyft. The biggest downside of driving for Lyft or Uber, I'm sure, is trying to find a place to pee. That didn't always work out. Well, I was just interested to see what would happen if I did like a little 2-color treatment on this girl's hair with the green instead of black. It's all right. It's okay. I hope this isn't too echoey. I'm hearing it on my phone. Hey, how about this being landscape instead of sideways? That's kind of cool. All right, well, I guess we'll call this hair as good as it's going to get. What if I put, like, just for fun, what if I just put some yellow? I have no idea what this is going to look like. Gets pretty green. Just a couple, maybe. I don't know. I'm going nuts with it. See, here's the problem with these. That's like, I thought, I'll tell these stories, and I write down the stories, and then I end up going way over time and divulging way too much of my life because I need more stories. More bad jobs. Oh, okay. Here's a good one. On theme. I got hired to be like holiday help at a company that I guess will leave nameless, even though I love the people there and I love the stuff they do, but I'm going to talk some dirt on one of the guys that worked with me. It was like retail, and it was in Haight-Ashbury. I worked right where like all the tourists would convene in this one sort of Haight and Ashbury area, of course. And it's kind of weird. It's like Disneyland, but it's very unstructured. There isn't anybody in charge of the entertainment or attractions there, so it gets weird. And it's a weird mix of people, mostly like Europeans and hippies and travelers. And anyway, the point of the story is I got this job, and it was basically retail work. And I ended up working with the same guy every time. And I have friends in the company, but this guy I didn't really know too well. And when I was hired there, they told me, you're going to work with this guy. We'll call him Joni. You're going to be working with Joni. Do what he says, but don't do as he does, And I figured out why they said that, because he would look down at his phone the whole time or at the computer or whatever, and he would somehow he knew if a punk rock person came into the store, somebody affiliated with the punk rock scene. Maybe they're in a band or whatever. He could like see it from the top of his head. He could see their torn jackets or whatever. And then he'd lift his head up and like want to talk to them. Otherwise, he tried to avoid, talking to anybody else. I thought that was funny. I don't know if is there anything more to that story? Oh, so he would play his punk music, and it was like, I like some punk music, but probably we'd call it like pop punk, like Ramones or Groovy Ghoulies, The Clash, of course. But like that stuff that you'd call like the LA mosh pit kind of music is not my jams. And that's all he wanted to play. He'd want to play like the mosh pit music. I don't know how this is going to get finished if this pen dries up. So this guy, Jonesy, would just... Joni? We'll call him Jonesy. I like Jonesy better. He would just play the mosh pit music. And he needed that to like be on. And supposedly I would be able to play my music sometimes. But, it was like 3-1 with his music versus mine. And one time I put on Ween, and he couldn't handle it, for being like into sort of alternative scenes and weirding people out with punk music. He could not handle Ween. But I would notice that people would, this was a weird mix of people on Haight Street, and you'd get all kinds of people, and mostly tourists. And you would just look over at the front door and you'd see that somebody was coming in, like a couple. And then the music would like hit them as they would enter the door. And you'd see like, I'm just specifically picturing something. It doesn't mean, it's not a generality, but it'd be like the girlfriend would be like, "Nop," and leave. And the guy would walk in and check things out for a little bit. Or, if it was me, I would be the one turning around leaving. I've done that many times. I was at this bar that was like Bigfoot themed bar in San Francisco, and we were all hanging out with friends, and there was just something about the like level of music and the tinniness of it or something. I was like, I'm out of here. I can't take it. I left, and I think I just walked home and they hung out. Anyway, this guy, he had to have his mosh pit music playing. And one time he'd plug in his iPad. One time he plugged it in and it was playing his mosh pit music, and then the next song came on, and it was like Rihanna or something, and he was so embarrassed, and he ran over and he stopped it from playing, and he started having to like explain it to us. He was like, "Oh, I you guys, I loaned my phone to this girl I was going out with, and she must have put that on there. I don't know how that got on there." And we're like, "It's fine, it's cool, no worries." No, but I mean, that shouldn't have been on there. I don't know why that came on. He brought it up probably like 3 more times throughout the day. I don't know how that Rihanna song would have ended up on my phone. Couldn't handle it. Couldn't handle that anybody would find out that he might listen to not tough guy music, Guy was like 4'5", which maybe doesn't help. Maybe he had kind of a complex. Oh, what a mess this background is. Okay. What I was thinking for this would be like some gray pens. It's good to, if you have like a lot of color, to have areas that aren't colorful. Can't have it be candy cane lane everywhere. Oh, I'm out of stories. No, I always have more stories about things going wrong at work. Oh, before I worked at the unnamed place, I worked across the street, and it was a hat shop. Well, I guess I won't name the name brand. We don't want anybody like telling on me as I talk about this, but I worked at this hat shop, and man, that was, again, it's on Haight and Ashbury, and it was pretty nutty there. I ended up at a lot of jobs where like people worked if they were kind of between things, or had trouble fitting in other jobs. I don't know, maybe that's every employment place. But once I asked for a raise, I'd been there for like almost a year, and I was like, "Hey, let's see, can I mute this or what?" No, I better not. I was like, "Hey, I've been here, I'm getting on a year. Can I get a raise?" And they were like, "Well, what do you have in mind?" And I said, like, an extra dollar. Bringing me up to like $11. And the girl I was talking to, the woman, laughed. She laughed at that idea of an extra dollar. Nobody gets an extra dollar. Anyway, since it was on Haight, you'd get a lot of like, what is it, nouveau hippie? I don't know what you'd call them, traveler folks, and they'd be living their lifestyle. And let's see, what can we say about them? They'd come in to buy these hats that were like, I haven't seen them since I moved, so I don't even know if it's really a thing anymore. Probably not, but you get like the flat brim kind of hip hop sort of shaped hat, and then they'd have all kinds of extra stuff sewn on them, and they like poke holes in the brim and put like gemstones or crystals or something coming through them, which probably meant they were dealing something. Who knows? I didn't ask. But they'd come in and sometimes they'd be like, "Okay, use the bathroom," and then like you'd hear them throwing up back there, and you'd have to be like, "Hey, you're gonna clean that up?" "I don't want to clean that up," and they just kind of rush out of there. a pretty, you know what? Hey, realizing that I have like anxiety issues and social anxiety issues, I've kind of really picked like kind of the worst places to be trying to work. Um, Working places where you might be like arguing with people or trying to kick out weirdos or trying to stop the guy who's walking out of the store with a Panama hat on that costs $200. Well, I mean, I think a lot of people are doing it and they don't even realize that there might be something specific about them that makes it probably like not a good idea to have that kind of job, or maybe they feel like they don't have any other choices. I don't know. What do you think? What do you think out there? Let's see here. I was thinking of doing something where these some flesh tones. Mm, more bad jobs. More bad jobs. Let's see here. Oh, here's another thing that would get on me. I think I have like sensory kind of sensitivities, like noise, like I've, said walking out of places over noise. But at the hat shop, we had a record player, it was very hipster sort of setup. And it was like it's part of the appeal of working there is you could disc jockey the record player at that time. And so that was pretty cool because I could like discover some new music. You could bring in stuff on vinyl and just buy something for 50 cents and see what it sounds like. Bring it in. They were pretty cool about letting you play whatever. But it also meant like if I didn't like what they were playing, it was very distracting. I'm just gonna put it out there that I'm not a fan of, wait for it, Velvet Underground. Sorry. I mean, I know there's some sort of mainstream songs that sound okay, but they do some wackadoo, non-musical kind of stuff and kind of, what is it, kind of screamy sometimes. I'm not even really picturing what it sounds like anymore, but I knew I just didn't enjoy having that on. Sorry, Velvet Underground fans. I liked putting on like Talking Heads, or there was a lot of like, I don't know, like ragtime music and stuff. No, it wasn't ragtime. It was like, I don't remember his name. I'm awful with names. Big band kind of stuff sometimes. And then they came in. The management said, no more record player. I think it was really distracting to the employees because the music would end and you'd have to like leave a customer and go running off to flip the record over every 20 minutes, right? Let's see what's left to do on her. So that wasn't working out. So they came in and they're like, we installed this new system. Oh, that sounds cool. And that was a bummer because it was like the Haight-Ashbury stereotype starter kit, was their playlist. And it was probably only like 20 minutes long. And you just have to listen to it over and over again. It was like, there is a season change. You better stop. What's that sound? Everybody look what's going. I hate that kind of stuff. I'm sorry. I hate it. Yeah, I guess like my dad listened to that kind of stuff. And better stuff too. I mean, I still like the Beatles. But a lot of that, like, hey, we're in the late 60s, early 70s, and the times are changing. they're played out. Is there music that like you used to be fine with, and then you just have heard it enough times? Even songs I used to like, it's like, yeah, that's fine, but I don't need to hear this again. I've heard it enough. But those, no, I can't. What kind of music did your parents listen to? I think what's weird is like my mom never listened to music. I mean, she would tolerate or even enjoy the stuff that me and my brother would put on when we started getting into music in like the mid 80s. We'd put on like Eddie Grant, or Phil Collins. Nothing cool. Ghostbusters soundtrack. Oh my God. On tape, put in the Ghostbusters soundtrack, or the Dr. Demento 70s edition. We were listening to that kind of stuff. But my mom would just like tolerate whatever was on. Never seen her like put on music, which is kind of nuts. I think there's people in the news these days who are like that, who just don't appreciate any sort of art or culture really. Like, I guess there's a lot of people out there that are like that, more than you'd think, but it's it's like a different kind of human being if you don't ever decide to like go check out a gallery or a museum or a concert or a symphony or you know um, I don't even think she ever really like took us to the movies. Send me off to the movies alone. I loved doing that. And then you'd like hop from theater to theater, and the management wouldn't care because what difference does it make? I could spend a whole Saturday doing that. But anyway, no, never put on music ever. Never seen her read. Which is odd because like she um, is a purported Christian, so you'd think that you'd see people who call themselves a Christian reading the Bible, but never saw that happen. Clearly, I've run out of work stories. Well, let's see here. Going into an hour here, so we'll wrap it up in 8 minutes. See what I can do to finish this up with 8 minutes to go. I always picture these taking like 5 minutes, and that's very unrealistic. Well, I hope that this one is sounding and looking better. I hope it's not too echoey. I kind of hear something. I got to work that out still. All right, we have time for one more work story. Let's see. My first job, really, I mean, we'll just call it my first job because it was the one that I stayed at, my first career. No, I mean, I worked at Taco Bell for a week or two, and met one of my best friends still at Taco. We both worked at Taco Bell, started the same day. What's up, Matt? So he tipped me off to this other job that he moved on to a couple of years later. Well, maybe not that long. It was at a roller rink. So there was all kinds of shenanigans at this roller rink. And let's see, what kind of shenanigans? Maybe first of all, along the theme of, bad work ethics. I mean, I guess that's just being a teenager, but I would just like kind of, I don't know, cop an attitude and huff around if somebody spilled popcorn when it's like my job to sweep up the popcorn. It's like, if I hate it that much, don't have a job where your job is to sweep up popcorn. Huh, that was kind of interesting. But what else? Oh, you'd be in charge of the bathrooms. You'd have to clean out the bathrooms. This is a good story to end on. And these bathrooms at this roller rink at the time, they didn't have stall doors. So after hours, you'd go in and clean up and it's fine. But sometimes you'd have to go in and check in or go to the bathroom yourself. and there's no stall doors. So you'd walk past, even just you like to use the sink to wash your hands, trying to mind your own business. And there would be some, lonely dude behind you going to the bed, sitting down. And you'd have to pretend that you don't see him. And sometimes we'd have to like clean out the girls' bathroom, and they just like run in, and like the girls who would, not during like skating sessions, but the girls who would do like the artistic skating and like kind of felt like they lived there, they'd just come in and go to the bathroom while you were trying to like clean it. And as a teenage boy, I felt like that was outside my comfort levels. One time, there was this guy, and he, I think he had some issues of his own, and he came over to us and said, "Somebody pooped in the sink," and we're like, "What? There's poop in the sink. I touched it and sniffed it. It's poop." And so we had to go and check it out, and it was a Heath bar. So false alarm. I'm glad that he just touched and sniffed a Heath bar. The other thing, though, is that, whenever somebody was starting new, if it was if a guy was starting as a new employee, they would get hazed. I guess sometimes by me and my friend Matt, we would do some shenanigans that were all in good fun and no harm. But there was one guy who he would take it too far. He would like he would find out like on the schedule that somebody new was coming, and he would eat like a bunch of the snack bar corn dogs and chili dogs at the beginning of the session, and then by the end he would unleash on the bathroom and just create a whole problem, and then assign the new guy to clean that up. Shame. It's going too far. Well, I guess we'll wrap this up then. Just about to hit an hour, so that's pretty good streaming. Thanks for joining me, if you did, and hey, there's going to be links underneath to my Kickstarter, and I should have brought this up a long time ago. But yeah, check it out. It's this coloring book. This image is in it. And that's it. We'll see you next time. Mm-hmm.